The Dr. Melissa Show and the Stories That Shape Us is sponsored by CNY Mental Health Counseling. So our guest today is Arel Moodie, a dynamic professional speaker, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and widely recognized for his captivating insights on personal and organizational development. With a passion for understanding human dynamics, Arel dedicates his work to uncovering what makes people tick, sharing universal truths that drive personal growth and organizational success. Arel has spoken to over 750,000 people across 48 states and 5 countries, earning a reputation for his engaging energy, impactful delivery, and relatable insights. His strong repeat client base is a testament to his ability to connect with audiences, with organizations frequently inviting him back at the request of both leadership and staff. Arel's speaking engagements include multiple appearances at the White House, 3 TEDx talks, and recognition from President Obama for his contributions. In addition to his speaking success, Arel has built multiple 7-figure businesses and was named to Inc. magazine's 30 Under 30 list of America's top entrepreneurs. He's also been honored on the 40 Under 40 list in Central New York. As the co-founder of Talkadot.com, Arel helps professional speakers amplify their impact and generate spin-off businesses by capturing leads, testimonials, and audience insights, turning every stage appearance into measurable business growth. Arel's work has been featured in the New York Times, USA Today, Essence, Forbes, Black Enterprise, and the Huffington Post. He's contributed to television shows like The Doctors and hosted Family Reboot on Disney+, helping families reconnect and strengthen their bonds. His former podcast on career and personal development reached millions of listeners in 178 countries, topping Apple's charts as the #1 career podcast. A self-proclaimed human development investigator, Arel dives deep into what makes people thrive. He brings to life over 60 years of research on adult development theory, delivering transformative insights that help organizations better understand themselves and those around them, driving meaningful results. Arel is by far not just about business, though. He is an accomplished hobbyist dancer, having performed at Madison Square Garden. Arel has had 2 viral videos with millions of views, and in one blink and you'll miss it moment, Beyonce featured a picture of him during her Super Bowl halftime show. Above all, Arel's greatest pride is his role as a devoted husband and father of 2 sons, having met his wife at age 18 and built a life centered on love, connection, and family. Woof. Arel Moodie, thank you for being here.
Melissa, golly, when you said you was doing the full bio.
I'm like, I'm going for the long one, buddy.
You was doing the full Megillah there. Golly, thank you. This is Dr. Melissa, such an honor and a privilege. And normally when I get an introduction, I'm behind the stage of a speaking engagement. So it's a very different experience to be eye to eye with someone saying that things. So
I couldn't help but watch your face. As I'm saying all of these things, you're like, yup. Is it like what comes up for you when you hear all these incredible things that you've done?
A couple of things flash through my mind. The first thing is be there and just be present, right? Mm-hmm. Like just receive it. The other thing is, do I look like an a-hole listening to myself? Like, I'm killing it out there in these streets. Like, do I look like an a-hole who's like, I did it, but I'm not the one saying it. So it's like, those two kind of juxtapositioning thoughts jump into the head.
So does it make you uncomfortable to hear a little bit?
Yeah, I would say
and
that.
No, you don't look like an a-hole.
It's important. Thank you. I trust your unmedical opinion in this moment here, even though you're medically trained to give wonderful opinions. I think that it is a lot of is one thing to work really hard for something, and there's another thing to be acknowledged for the work that you do. It's a weird dynamic where you work really, 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 really hard because you want to achieve a thing and you want people to see it. But then the weird dynamic is when people actually see it, it's kind of like, oh, I don't really want to be seen.
Right.
So it does push and pull. There's a wonderful story that has helped me whenever someone feels, whether it's imposter syndrome or whether it is, I go back to this story of just how do you accept like compliments or anything. I'll try to do the short version of it. And depending upon people's belief systems, you believe whatever you choose to believe. I respect everyone's beliefs. This just worked for my belief system. And the way it works is there was this old rabbi who ran this synagogue, right? And he had a lot of congregants and a lot of members. And one of his members was this super rich guy. Okay, the super rich guy needs to go off on a business trip, but he's got this really, really expensive car. And this car, if you don't turn the engine on in the winter, like every so often, it'll mess the car up. So you got to turn it on. So he gives the keys to the rabbi, and he goes, "Could you just take care of my car, turn it on for me while I'm on my business trip?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course, happy to help," right? So rabbi's doing his job, turns it on a little bit, but then the rabbi, who has a very old beat-up car, his car dies, and he's got to get to a meeting. So he calls up his friend. He goes, "Hey, listen, I hate to trouble you, but my car died. I was wondering if I could borrow, that super fancy car of yours just to get from point A to point B." Businessman goes, "Of course, Rabbi, no problem," right? And this is like, imagine, suit, big beard, old guy, whatever is that classic rabbi view, right? So he's in this car and he's driving it, and everyone's turning their head to look at the car. It's the most beautiful car anyone has ever seen. And everyone's like, "Wow, look at that car. Wow, look at that car." But as he's driving it, he's like, "This isn't my car. I know this is not my car." So even though everyone's looking at me and everyone is acknowledging me, it's not mine. I'm just using it. I'm just driving it. And the idea of that, the principle that was transferred from that is like when you accomplish something, and again, I happen to believe in God, and I believe whatever you believe in is what you believe in. It's wonderful, right? And that anything I accomplish, really, I know who it belongs to. Like God created it. So even though I may have been on TV, and even though I may have done those things, I couldn't have done those things without the source of where it came from. So when someone thanks me, I go, "You're thanking me, but I don't really own it. I know who owns it. I just happen to be borrowing it in this kind of moment." And it allows me to kind of give the light and the glory to where it kind of belongs and stable myself in the moment.
Which is, that's such a beautiful story. Yeah. And I think it is. It's connecting us all to something like a higher power, right? Which is both something to depend on and count on, depending on whatever role it plays in your life. But the other thing that I can't help but hear in that story is that it takes the pressure off of you.
It does. It's like, hey, look, all these wonderful things that you're saying I did, it's like I'm borrowing it. I'm just holding on to it temporarily in this thing called life, right? And there's a bigger thing that I can't understand and that controls all the things and makes the sun and the moon and the stars and all the things just work at a quantum physics level, at a deep level. And if you kind of do that, then it's like, oh, I could take that because I know who it belongs to. So it kind of keeps me, I try to be as humble as I possibly can.
Grounded.
I try to, like I think it's an important thing to be. And that does it for me. That works for me. Yeah.
Do you feel like you are who you thought you'd, like when you were a little kid and you were thinking about your adult life, do you feel like you are who you thought you'd be?
Funny story. I was just talking to my son who's 12 years old, and he was asking me what I wanted to be when I was younger. And I told him, what I wanted to be more than anything else in the world was an R&B singer. I wanted to be an R&B. Like,
who did you want to be?
I grew up. I loved 112, Jodeci, Usher, Blackstreet. The whole like R&B scene from the like mid '90s to early 2000 was just to this day I could listen to that genre of music and it's the best. The challenge is God did not bless me with a voice of singing ability. I can't sing at all. I've tried. I could fake it. But
I feel like I've heard your karaoke, and it's really not bad.
It ain't gonna sell no records, okay? It's not gonna move.
All the stage presence.
It ain't gonna move the needle, okay? So I'm aware that like I wanted to sound like Brian McKnight, but in reality, I not even close, right? So. But when you asked me when I was a kid, well, why did I want? So people would ask you, what do you want to be when you're a kid? But a lot of times people don't say, well, why do you want to be it? And what I wanted was to travel the country, be on stage, impacting people with my voice, performing, changing people's lives, and making a difference with my music. Now, am a professional speaker and I travel the country, I travel the world. I'm on stage with a microphone. I'm not singing, I'm speaking. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually, in a very weird way, doing the thing that I wanted to do more than anything else. But instead of singing, I'm doing it through speech, through professional speaking. So when I was talking to him about that, and I was like, yeah, I guess in a weird way, I am doing the thing that I wanted to do when I was a kid. It was a very I never saw it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that oftentimes when we're younger, we want to do something, but we never really delve into why. You want to be a doctor, why? I want to be a vet, why? And then I think if you go 1 or 2 levels deeper than what surface gives us, you actually might realize that, there's a lot of different pathways to get to that end goal. And I think that's really, that conversation should happen more.
Yeah. What is it about that for you?
Why?
That makes
Why
you
do you want to do that? And then you answer it, why? And then you answer it, why? Go 3 whys deep. Whenever you ask, go 3 whys deep, and you'll find that an epiphany might hit you that you didn't even know was there.
So here's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So I always struggle with the question why, and maybe it's because in therapy, we're essentially taught not to ask the question why, right? Because if I said to you, well, I don't know, it's hard to come up with these off the cuff, but if I'm like, well, why did you want to be an R&B singer?
Yeah.
Right? And you'd rattle off some answer, but there's something different when you ask the question of what is it about being an R&B singer that resonated for you?
I actually think that is magic right there, by the way. I think it's magic because why does, in a very, I'm going to say this wrong, but it almost creates a kind of knee-jerk, I don't know answer.
Yeah.
But when you do a what-based why question, so what is it about R&B?
Yes.
That feels very approachable. But if I say why, I think you're 100% right, because if you say why to me, there is a natural I don't know, I just want to. But what about it? Well, I love the traveling. I love the idea. Then you can really get to it. So I actually really like the what-based why question instead of the why-based why question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sharp. It's really
sharp.
And
then it's a how.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, what, how? So then it's how did you become the speaker, the R&B singer turned
That's right.
speaker on stage, still being able to impact people.
That's right. Yeah. And I think the how is such a fascinating I get so fascinated with the how. I'm probably more fascinated with the how than anything else. So whenever someone does something, we'll be in this wonderful podcast. What goes through my is well, how did you decide on that bio? How did you decide on this microphone? How did you decide on this space? Because I think if you can actually understand someone's thought process, you may not be able to replicate it exactly, but you can understand it. And if you can understand it, you can maybe apply it to your unique situation. So that's why I love podcast episodes like this. That's why I think, I know you do a lot of coaching and you work with a lot of folks for either counseling or coaching. And I think it's really important to have someone who you can rely on to kind of show you the how and ask you the questions that you don't know how to ask yourself to get the answer that's already there. You just, you're too close to the label to read the jar.
100%. And I mean, if there's a sales pitch for counseling / coaching, and I would say the way that I do it, it's the same thing, right? I'm exploring things with people, pulling things out of them, helping them figure out their what, their how, and ultimately their why. But I'm just not diagnosing people in the coaching.
Yeah.
Right? Or providing a treatment, but it is essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So go back to that little boy, right? And he wanted to be an R&B singer, right? What else did he want out of his future life?
The main thing I wanted was to not be in the projects.
Okay.
That was my number one. I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, New York, welfare and wonderfully loving family. I had a wonderful mom. I have a wonderful mom, a wonderful dad, wonderful brother. We just happened to be a great family who just was there. And I never felt like I belonged there, from the day one.
What didn't fit?
It was more violent. It was more the rubric of success growing up was always, it didn't, not going to class made you cool, right? If you could beat someone up, you were cool. If you made fun of other people, you would I would look at the kids who were, for better or for worse, the traditionally popular person, and everything that they did felt so much the antithesis of my natural way of being. Like,
how did you feel when you would see that stuff?
Oh, I hated. You learn how to survive. One of the things, in my bio, you talked about what makes people tick.
Right.
I started doing that as a survival mechanism. So, for example, I used to be on the subway and I'd have to go to school. I was an hour commute on the bus and the train to go from my house to my high school. I was in Canarsie. I went to Coney Island. And you start learning, like, okay, if I'm in the train car where the conductor is, I have a less chance of getting robbed, slashed with a box cutter, which was called a $1.50 back then because people would just slash people in the face as an initiation to a gang called the Bloods. But I found out because every single time someone got robbed, every single time there was a fight or a brawl, it usually wasn't in the conductor's car. So I started observing this behavior and going, if I want to be safe, I got to go and find where does the train stop, where the conductor is, because nobody wants to do something where they could get caught. I'm going to do it in the last car of the train where there's nobody, right? So a lot of my observations became, well, if I go in this part of my neighborhood, that's where typically I'm going to get harassed or someone's going to like try to come after me or try to beat me up or something. But when I'm on this part of the neighborhood, that doesn't happen. So what's the difference? And then what time? During the day, I could go to any part of any neighborhood and was fine. But as soon as nightfall hit, that part was darker than other parts. And that's where, so I started observing a lot of these weird human dynamics. Like, why is it that this kid, when he makes the joke, everyone laughs? But when the same other kid, a different kid makes the same or similar joke, nobody laughs. What was it about the timing? What was it about the person? So a lot of my youth was this weird observation and studying purely for survival. How do I get from Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, in a way that no one beats me up, no one makes fun of me, no one robs me, no one, And again, sometimes as kids, you have a few occurrences happen and you blow it up to think this is, like, it's not like I got beat up every day. It's not like I got robbed every day, but it happened. So that you now create this imprint of, I know this is now possible and I never want that to happen to me again. What do I got to do to make sure it doesn't? So a lot of me as a kid in that environment was trying to figure out, how do I observe when is that person, before that person punches that person, what were like 4 steps before that indicated, oh, it's about to go down over there. And I could even to this day, my like spider sense can go off if I feel like trouble's about to go down. And nothing might be wrong, but I'm like, oh, that dude's about to do, I could tell because that's like 4 steps before the fight happens. So a lot of it came from purely survival.
Do you think it was based in fear?
100%. Yeah. I didn't, look, I will say this unabashedly. I'm not a thug. I grew up in an environment where I knew a bunch of thugs.
Yeah.
I was never a thug. So I was constantly in this state of fear. And what's crazy about it is that my brother, my older brother, is a very strong guy. Like his, in our youth, he punched a lot of people and won a lot of times. My dad, very tough guy, super, very loving, both of them very loving dudes, but they're both super, super tough. And I used to look at them and be like, yo, whatever that is, I ain't got it. And my brother and my dad would be in our hallway and they would be like play fighting, sparring, because my dad wanted to make sure we knew how to punch and knew how to fight and,
To protect yourselves.
Yeah. And my brother always took to it. Like he was in there like ready to scrap. And I was always like, I don't want to do that. Like it was just something inside of me that just had this like, that's not me, and I got to figure out another way. Obviously I got to learn how to protect myself and, I know how to throw a punch. I hope I don't have to, but I don't want to either, like I will, but I don't want to.
Yeah. What was that like with your dad and your brother though, even to be like, no, thanks. Like I'll learn it. You got to learn it. Right.
Yeah. You got to learn. Honestly, like in my childhood, it felt like a letdown. It felt like
you were letting them down.
Yeah. I wasn't living up to the definition of what a man was, right? Because I should be able to walk into any environment and just dominate with my presence, with my, like I'll call some, that's at least they never said that.
Right.
It's just the pressure I had put on myself by observing them. So because I didn't live up to that, it kind of felt like, well, if I don't get into fights, then I can't lose a fight. And if I don't lose a fight, then I can't admit to my brother or dad that I wasn't strong enough or, tough enough to be like they were, because they were really good at those things. So I think a lot of my survival and a lot of my observations of people came from this deep fear of like, well, if I don't get into fights, I can't get beat up. And if I don't get beat up, I don't have to admit that I'm not man enough. So it kind of became like, how do I observe it and then get out of it as soon as possible?
Well, and I mean, it's like you're in this constant sort of state of fear and hypervigilance, right? So it's like, I mean, I know it's so not like playing chess, but that's what I'm hearing kind of. It's like you're staying 4 or 5 steps ahead, and I suck at chess. So like, there's that. But it's like, it is. It's like, but that with the fear on top of it. And you're talking about some deep level fears too, right? Like letting my dad down, not living up to like my big brother, but also knowing at my core, I don't have that in me and I don't want to.
Yeah.
So as much as you wanted maybe the validation from them, was there also a part of you that like kind of rejected it at the same time where you're like, I actually don't want to be like you guys and get power that way?
I don't think so until much later in life, like for a very, very long time. And here's the wildest part, right? My dad, my brother, they never said, yo, you a punk because you can't, like they like loving support.
They let you be you.
It's a story I created in my head about, well, this is what I see them and I don't have that. And it wasn't until I got much older in my adult years that I could look back and go, you know what? I respect it. I honor it. And I built a lot of really important skill sets because I didn't go down that path, right? Like, let's say I did go down that path. A lot of my, like what I feel, there's very few things in this world that I will say with like utmost confidence, I do this really, really, really well, right? Because I'm always like, I can learn, I get better. There's a few things I feel really comfortable. One of the things I feel really comfortable with is I feel comfortable around everyone. Like old people, young people, inner city, suburban, wealthy. I feel so comfortable because I had to learn how to connect with people, because what I found at an early age is that if people like you, they don't mess with you.
Right.
Right. There was this one kid who was, he made really bad choices. He was a teenager. He went to jail at a very young age, but he was like the coolest kid in my neighborhood. And he was real strong. And he fought a lot. He fought like a lot. And I was like kind of scared of him. But he never messed with me, but I knew what he's done, right? And there's one time, like I was growing my hair out because when I was younger, braids were really cool, cornrows were really cool. So I was like, I'm gonna grow my hair out and get it. And he had poofy hair and a skin color similar to mine. So when he saw me, he was like, you like me. And he just had this like connection, like you're like me. And then he was like, nobody mess with him. And I realized like he didn't have to do that, but because he liked me and he saw like maybe I looked like him when he was younger or there was some type of thing there, he put himself into a position to kind of like protect me.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to. And I made this realization of like, and it was just a kernel of a realization of like, well, if people like you, they won't mess with you. And if you connect with people on whatever reason, then there is like safety connected to it. So I built that skill set of, how do I get to know people? How do I get to connect with people? And if I didn't build that, and maybe I went to punching people in the face if I didn't get what I wanted, I wouldn't have built that. And over time, my ability to connect with people is probably one of my most treasured assets in my professional life, in my personal life, because I have so many deep friendships and deep relationships. And I don't think that level of depth is possible unless you can connect with people.
100%. Yeah. And even another part of that I hear is you're not judging people. So it's not that you are saying, even how you introduced that kid, right? You're like, this was a kid who made a lot of bad choices, right? And I imagine another part of that is like, there's a lot that kid went through that he was dealing with that made him make those choices or think that was the choice that he had to make, right? But you're not once in that story did you say that was a bad kid.
Yeah.
Right. And that was a reflection of his character, who he was as a person. Yeah. And so that's another part of it. It's like, I think that it sounds like you connect with people, but you also see sort of like the entirety of the person, or even with your dad and your brother. It's like they are great, loving guys, but
you take any person, any person, and you just put them in a different family.
Right.
You put them in a different environment. There's no telling that they're still that person, you know? So our environment often triggers. It's kind of like the Incredible Hulk. When he gets angry, it triggers the Hulk.
Right.
For some people, experiences or moments will trigger a response. I'm a really big believer in this idea that there's 3 moments in our childhood that create the genesis of our identity. There's one moment that says there's something wrong here and that something is me, right? So there's a young part of us where we have that first realization. The next moment is I don't belong. So like, I'm not a part of this. And then the third moment is I'm on my own. I've got to figure it out. So there's 3 distinct moments through like 0 to 21 that we all experience where we'll relate to a moment where it was like, what's my first memory of like, there's something wrong here and that something wrong is me. I like don't belong, or I'm on my own. And how your gamma radiation triggers in that moment, your response creates who you are. So like, some people could be in my situation, and in a moment where I said, oh, something's wrong here and that something wrong is me, they could have triggered, it's everyone's fault and I blame them.
Totally.
And now I live my whole life through that lens. And someone else could trigger it as, I've got to figure out how to become the best so nobody can ignore me. And that's a totally different trigger. So sometimes our environment will pull out that different triggering response, but that triggering response creates the genesis of our identity. And then we live our whole life through that lens of a 7-year-old, a 12-year-old, an 18-year-old, and we don't even realize it. And, a lot of important deep work, if you can actually get to those moments and then go, well, is it true? Is that really? And then you start going, no, it's not, or I made that decision when I was 7. What's a 7-year-old know? Then you can kind of start creating yourself for who you want to be and not from the responses from your childhood. So when you take anyone who's bad or made bad choices, and I always like to say choices and people are different things.
Totally.
They just were in an experience where that gamma radiation that triggered that green Hulk and yours triggered the red Hulk. And I don't know why I'm going down this Marvel analogy here, but I think hopefully it's landed.
Sense.
Yeah,
and that's part of this is like, to me, it's always about, and a lot of researchers will say this. It's like, if you try to think of why people are the way that they are, a lot of it is what happened to that person. And it's that simple. It's like, what is the story of that person's life to, foster all of those different turns and pivots and ways that they become who they are. And,
I have, my son is in karate. He does karate. And there was this moment where I think about it often because I'm like, this was, I believe, we'll find out, this was one of his moments, right?
Yeah.
And it was an experience. So he's in a karate tournament. And I personally, as my parental philosophy, don't believe in participation trophies. If you participate and you don't win, your trophy is your participation. If you get first, second, or third, congratulations, right? But like, I'm not a huge fan of like 8th place gets a medal because like you didn't.
And those award ceremonies take so long.
There's a lot of reasons I don't like it, right? But anyway, so he was like, I don't know, 7 years old. He's at his first tournament. And it happened to be a tournament where everyone gets a medal regardless. Now, he happened to not place in the top 3. In fact, I think he was probably like 6 or 7. And all his friends got these medals. And he wanted one. And I was like, dude, you didn't actually earn a first, second, or third place. Those are participation awards. And then his friends were like, no, all you gotta just go to that table and you'll get the medal. Go get the medal. And he's like, but Daddy, I want the medal so bad.
Yeah.
And I was like so conflicted because I wanted to be like, the easiest thing is just to give it to him, let him have his moment and be with his friends. And I couldn't. I was like, I have principles for a reason, and principles are principles only if they get tested. And I said no, and little homie broke down bawling. I mean, snot, crying, just absolutely bawling. And I think that he had 2 choices in that moment as I saw it. Option 1 is everyone deserves good things except me. Option 2, if I really want something, I got to work for it. Out of all of the kids that went to that tournament, he's one of the 2 kids that are still in karate and still working towards it and still participating. And I don't know if I can't say participation in trophies was the reason the other kids didn't. But what I can say is that, 6 years later, my son is still trying to perfect his craft. So I'm hoping he chose if I want something, I got to work for it and not that I don't deserve. But I think that he could have chosen either one of those, and then that would have sent him on a journey in a completely different pathway of what his life would be. And our experiences and how we choose to respond to them, it really is so there's what happens to us and what we choose to respond. And it's a much more like detailed and nuanced thing that you're probably way more trained at explaining, but creating a little bit of space between experience and response. Reaction is it happens, response is it happened, and now I've got to create just a little bit of space and then say, well, how do I choose to respond? And I think the more we can actually choose response over reaction, the better we will ultimately be.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things, too, in terms of your stories about how you grew up, is that a lot of times people would say if you grow up in an environment that is constant trauma and constant fear, then your brain never even gets out of the process of fight or flight. You're always in this survival mode. Yeah. And so you're never actually able to respond, which requires not being in that survival mode. So how do you think you were able to, looking back, navigate that in terms of not just reacting or running away or learning how to fight so that you could just jump in at any moment, but really, truly, it sounds like you paused and you observed and you learned. Yeah. Which is a totally different way of being. Yeah. It's that truly is resilience. Yeah. And a lot of the definition, to me, the best definition of resilience is learning to manage uncertainty. Right? It's accepting what is, but knowing that you have no idea what will actually happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's an element that's nature and an element that's nurture. One of the things that I think is really fascinating. So in my adult work, in my adult life, in my professional work, I got really interested in this research called adult development theory, right? And it talks about these different phases of life that we go through in our adult years that when an experience happens, we'll make different meaning from them, right? So the first is the self-centric stage. Everything's kind of me-based. It's like me versus the world. What do I want from it? Then there's the group-centric stage, which comes after that, which is more we-based. You find a group, and that group becomes your identity. I think part of the decision-making is that my group of friends all were how I like to refer to as future successful people. Other people might call them nerds, right? I like to refer them as future, hey, man, you got a bunch of future successful friends. It's because the nerds are the kids who are we're not really trying to do things terribly, but we're playing by the rules, we're doing it. A lot of my friends were nerds growing up. We were the geeky. We were the kids who weren't really.
Were you a nerd?
100%. Yes. There was a cool kid table, and then there was the other cool table, and then there was the other table, other, and I was on the other table, But all of those kids were doing fine now, as adults. They're same environment as me, and they're nailing it. And the kids on the cool table, I know what not all of them are doing, but some of them, and it ain't
not cool anymore.
It's not the life I would choose for myself. Let's put it like that. So that self-centric to group-centric, who you surround yourself with, the kind of decisions they make. Because if my primary friends were the thugs, well, what's thug culture? What's how do I handle a situation if I know my friend would look down on me if I didn't punch him in the face? Right. So now I have to react to my group-centric way of being. Yes. So let me now do that. But if my friends are geeky and nerdy and they're like, yo, man, just come over here, get out of there, then I could feel more comfortable being who I am. So I think that resiliency also is I don't say it's solely, but if you look at your group and what are the norms of your group? What are the responsibilities of me to you, you to me, and what is normal to us? That's why Profound was so wonderful. It's so wonderful because we created a group that was very much, I got your back, you got mine, and I want you to feel that. And that's how we're going to, that's the essence of what we're going to create. It's a very different approach than if you punch you in the face, punch him back. It's a very different philosophy.
But it's actually that other kid that you described where he's hey, you look like me, you're safe.
Mm-hmm. And that is, I will say, rare. I'm not foolish enough to think if I just dress like everybody else, I'm gonna be good.
Right. But I think that there's, people will say that it's if you're trying to morph yourself to blend in, that generally doesn't work long term.
Yeah.
But if you find a group that accepts you who you are, and you can be a weird chameleon and do your thing without just blending, then those are your people.
Yeah, and what the research shows about group-centric is your group becomes you. Meaning, if you attack any member of the group, you attacked me.
Yeah.
Because there is no distinction. So in self-centric, the first stage, it's me. The group-centric is we, right? So there's rules that are written and unwritten that I abide by. But this one, I read it, when I got through this research, I really, all these lights went off in my head because I saw that's how I was there and that's how I was with this.
That's why I felt that at that time. And that's how I felt that.
Yeah. Because I can be in a group, but not part of a group. But when you're no, if I'm a hardcore conservative or I'm a hardcore liberal, there's certain written and unwritten rules on what I listen to, what I watch, what I wear, and it becomes who I am. And then when it becomes who you are, the group's norms will become your norms. So, parents since day one have been saying the whole, be careful who your friends are. And it's true though. It's
and it's a feedback loop, right? I mean, watch the same networks on TV. Yeah. It reinforces what you think and it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
What's interesting about group-centric thinking too is that there's an us and there's a them. The us is always perfect, pure, and good. And the them is always evil, bad, and wrong.
Yep.
And even if your us makes a decision that normally you wouldn't agree with, but it's my us, I gotta stand with them. I gotta roll with them.
Threatens your group.
And anyone who's against it, that's the them and they're evil. And that's, you always hear this phrase, well, they don't want you to do this and they're taking this away from you. It's wait a minute, who's they? Right? But the they is anyone who's not like us.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever read that book, Tribe? I don't know who it's by. I'll find out.
I think it's Seth Godin.
That sounds right.
It could be. I feel like he wrote a book called that. It could be another
one. That sounds right. But it's essentially that same premise. Yeah. And it's that idea of the outsider and that really, what is the word? Anthropologically. That we are. I mean, it is, again, it goes back to survival. And that it's the group-centric idea that if you let the outsider in, then there's a risk that you take. And so it's safer for your group to not have outsiders come in, to really just keep those boundaries as solid as you can. But that's not how we live anymore, or maybe shouldn't or don't. Yeah.
I mean, we very much live in a world where your neighborhood is no longer your group. Right. It used to be. Most people used to go into a neighborhood. You knew your neighbor, they knew you. There was the old man's lawn who you knew, don't go on it because he always gets mad. You'd walk down the street and Miss Martha would know about how you're doing in school. And, Miss Gwendolyn would ask you, how's everything going with your bake sale? People knew you and you knew them, There's this wonderful joke that I'm going to say his name wrong. It's Sebastian Maniscalco. He's a comedian.
Oh, yeah.
Super funny guy. He has this wonderful bit about when we were kids and someone knocked on your door, it was the greatest time. You ran to the door, you slid on your socks, you welcomed them in, you gave them an Entenmann cake. He's like, now, if someone knocks on your door, everyone freezes. Don't move. Don't let them know we're here. Did you invite someone? Did you invite someone? You start army crawling with a sword to the door, because now someone knocking on our door feels like a threat.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Where when we were younger, someone knocking on your door is like a surprise. It was kind of like the equivalent of a notification on social media.
Yep.
You get a notification on social media, you're like, ooh, I got a comment. I wonder what the comment was. And you get that joy and you want to go, likes are cool, but comments are like, ooh.
What'd they say?
That was like someone knocking on your door when we were younger. It was like, who came out of their way to visit me? Now we just assume it's the worst.
Which is tough, right? Because to connect that back to how you grow up, right? There could be more of a threat there compared to right now in this, upstate New York suburban life. Yeah. And yet the threat remains, right? This fear still remains. Yeah. Do you think you ever shake that? You personally, do you think you ever shake that sort of I've heard you talk about this before a little bit, this, as much as it's not in your everyday consciousness of growing up in the projects and getting out, that there's still always going to be this little part of you.
Yeah. And it gives me a sense of confidence too. There's always a part of me that I know I can access in a heartbeat. If someone threatened my wife or threatened my kids, there's a part of me that turns into this,
You're the Hulk.
I can pull. I know what a scary dude looks like. I know what a violent person looks like. I can emulate it and even act upon it if I needed to, because now in the adult version of me, I used to not want to do it because I'm like, I don't want violence. I don't want that. But what I know now as an adult is if I was ever in a situation, I can use it as a tool for protection. Mm-hmm. So like one time I was at a mall with my kids, and for whatever reason, some teenagers got into it and started fighting, right? First instinct is I put my kids behind me. I get real big. I get real loud. I use a very different, scarier voice and was yelling at them like, you better go nowhere near this part, right? And whether that worked or didn't work, that rumble and it didn't come near us, right? And we were able to get safely out. So I look at it less now as something I should fear. And I look at it now more as it's there as a tool that I can access when I need to. But I also hope I make life decisions that I don't need to access it either.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. So I went to our mutual friend Carlos's martial arts studio and I brought my whole team there to learn. It was his self-defense class. Yeah. And I said to him, I'm like, it's crazy because as much as I've always wanted to learn this, I've been afraid to learn it because it's almost like acknowledging that I need to learn it means that there is something that like an instance where I could need to use it. So I'd rather live with blinders on that I live in this safe little bubble. Yeah. Meanwhile, there have certainly been times in my life where I have been in risky situations and thank God didn't need to use them. But I mean, you never know. Yeah. And so I think that's exactly what he taught us. It's a skill. It's a tool. Hopefully you never need it. But it's also being so aware of your surroundings that you're preventing it a lot.
And I have It's a belief. I don't know what the right word is, but I also believe that if you're someone who knows how to access it, you carry yourself differently. Yeah. Like my son goes to karate. The sensei, amazing sensei. He has a daughter, right? His daughter is a world champion point fighting karate. She's
badass.
She's bad mamma jamma. Yeah. Okay, bad mamma jamma. She carries herself and walks in a way that you kind of just know. She knows something, and he said that's the best defense. The best defense is don't look like a target.
Right.
Targets get, unfortunately, the same way lions attack zebras that are weak and sick and young, humans aren't that different, me, I work out decently enough, right? One of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons I like to work out is because I want people, if they're deciding who am I going to rob, that guy doesn't look like he's worth it.
You're not an easy target.
Whether it's true or not, I don't want to look that way.
Right.
Right. So I'm aware that, fitness has wonderful health benefits and wonderful, I want to look attractive to my wife. But also, I want people to be like, that dude ain't worth messing with.
Right.
And I can just visually hold on to this reality of my physical fitness, right? 6'1", about 200 something pounds, that not him. That guy over there might be easier. So I can't quantify how many times my size has kept me safe, but I believe that if I hold on to that belief and I walk in a way that shows I could release the Kraken, it keeps you safe, So again, I think you take your life experiences and ultimately if you can turn them into tools that you can access when you need. I remember someone told me that Batman's superpower, because he doesn't actually have a superpower, but Batman's superpower is he always has a contingency plan. He can always go into his utility belt and pull out this or pull out that. So I kind of always liked that idea and thought about it from social situations. I like to gather as much data as I can from social interactions to figure out if I'm ever in a situation like this again, what could I pull out? What phrase could I say? What idea could I bring up? What question could I ask that could create safety, connection, and all those kind of things? And it became my utility belt. I know I have a lot of questions I can ask that create great conversations. My favorite question is, tell me something. Well, it's not really a question, it's a phrase, but if I meet someone, I'll say, tell me something new or exciting in your life. It's my favorite, I just met you question, or I haven't seen you for a long time, because Some people have something exciting and they've not told anyone because no one asked. Sometimes you have something new, but it's not exciting, but it's new and you want to get it off your chest. And you can talk about personal, you can talk about professional, you can talk about familial. So you can go, so it's a wonderful question. So once I learned that question, that was like something I can put into my utility belt that I can pull out.
How'd you learn it? How'd you learn that question?
I wish I could remember that. It was a lot of, awkward conversations. And then I started saying like, well, what's new? And then people kept saying, nothing. Nothing's new, right? And then I would say, what's exciting? And people said, nothing. And one day I said, what's new or exciting? And then someone said, well, and I said, brag to me, it's okay. And that follow-up question, brag to me, it's okay, is how I learned to pull out when someone clearly is showing signs that there's something, but they don't. So like the first question is, tell me something new or exciting. And someone will say, oh, that. Then my follow-up, if they're like hesitating, is either, come on, there's got to be something, or it's okay, brag to me. And that's just trial and error in lots of things. But once you find something and you get a response and then you do it 2 or 3 times and it's repeatable, I've asked that question, to politicians. I've asked that question to professionals. I've asked that questions to stay-at-home dads, stay-at-home moms, and it works. So it becomes that. So a lot of it is my natural.
It's like an icebreaker, sort of.
It's a perfect icebreaker. I think it's the simple. Anyone can ask the question, and if you know what the follow-up is, if you get a little bit of friction, you can smooth it out. But that's the type of stuff that I'm constantly collecting in my mind. Like constantly, I can't turn it off at this point. Like when you had an incredible guest on your show named Jeff Canals, who was like one of the smartest dude I've ever seen, smartest man I've ever met, my most favorite human being in the world. That's not my wife or my kids.
True bromance.
My true bromance with Jeff. But he's excellent with people. Yeah. He's phenomenal. So when I observe someone who's excellent with people, I always want to go like, well, what do they do? What are they, And I spent a lot of time with Jeff and Adam Weitzman, and one of the things I observed about them is they always edify other people and always diminish their own accomplishments. They always want others to feel better in their presence because they're so confident with who they are. I don't need to talk about how great I am. I want to talk about how great you are. Yeah. And then I believe that the emotion and feeling that someone experiences when around you is the characteristic trait that they assign to you. So if when you're around me, I think you're wonderful. Oh, you feel like, oh my gosh, you did that. That's amazing. As long as I'm being authentic. And you feel wonderful and amazing around me based on how I interact with you. Then when someone asks you to describe me, they're going to say he's wonderful and amazing. Yeah. So the emotion I experience when I'm with you is a characteristic trait that I will assign to you.
I couldn't agree more, because I think that there's the energy that you bring, there's the energy that I or the other person brings, but there's this magic that happens, or this dynamic between two people, and I totally get you. It's like a shared energy.
Yeah.
So let me ask you your question. Tell me something new or exciting.
Well, new. So with Talkadot, so that's a software as a service that I've created in the professional speaking space with an incredible team, much smarter people than I.
Which is as a user, it's incredibly easy to use.
Thank you.
And it's just, it is a slide that I'm able to put up. Yeah. I've never gotten feedback from speaking before. It's really easy and helpful. And
you just create a slide, throw it in your deck, ask people for feedback, and you give them a bonus like a PDF or something that's valuable to them. You get feedback, you get data, you get leads for either work or for speaking. So every time you use the tool, it creates this kind of motion to get more speaking engagements, more business. And for like 4 or 5 months now, I've been working on this really, really funny video. It's a really well produced video. The folks from DM Video Production made it. They're an incredible team, Eric and Andy, and we spent all this time doing things I've never done before. We created a storyboard. We created scenes. We created characters. We created a script. We created different shooting locations. And we took a lot of time to write it, and then we created a lot of humor and jokes. And it's like I'm proud of it like it's like a baby almost, because there's things you work on that you just like talk about something I'm working on just indefinitely, but this is like a mile marker within it. So we're going to be releasing that video soon. Probably by the time this episode comes out, it'll already be live. People go to talkadout.com to see the funny video if they want to. Hopefully it's funny, right? Yeah. I think people have told me it's funny, but I'm really excited about it because it allows me to play with something that I think is fun.
Yeah.
Like I want to do it. Like it's genuinely, like I really hope other people.
You up.
Yeah, I really hope other people like it, but also like I had so much fun doing it that I want people to like it, but if they don't, I'm like, it was still worth it. It was still so much fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So use that right there with what you said. I mean, even just your energy and like it clearly lights you up, right? Mm-hmm. You're excited about it. You can't wait for people to see it. Mm-hmm. But even if you just said, it's like, even if it bombs, whatever, I've had a great time making this.
Yeah.
Is that your definition of success or what is?
Ooh, such a great question. I waffle back and forth with this question. There are certain moments where I go, if you like what you do and you like how you do it, it's success, right? I've evolved a little bit to it though. I actually think you need a certain base level of achievement, whether financial or for the individual recognition, because there's certain things that we just need to get. I could have the best podcast in the world, but you know what? If I can't pay my bills and I'm struggling but man, I'm producing great content. What the adult development theory tells us is self-centric stage. We have to take care. It's also Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow is a different adult development theorist. He answers the question, what do we need?
Yeah.
Right? I do a lot with ego development, which is how do we make sense of experiences? But when you answer the question, what do we need? If I don't have food, clothes, if I don't have those, even whether it's true or not, the perceived value of that, I actually need whatever is my baseline of that. So then my creativeness, because you hear all these stories of someone who's this creative genius who didn't get the recognition in their lifetime. It's like, would you really want that? Like, do I want to be the successful artist only after I'm dead and I don't know it? So I believe there's a certain base goal that you've got to hit that's like financial typically, right? Like I hate to say that, but
there's a threshold.
You've got to have a certain number so you can feel like, I'm not worried about food. I'm not worried about gas in my car. You got to get to that point where you're like, these things are no longer. At some point for all of us, it was a concern maybe, right? Like, how do I put gas in my car? But once those are taken care of, then it becomes, am I enjoying my work? Am I enjoying, like, you're going to eat dirt. Every entrepreneur, every business person eats dirt. You do something you hate so you can do something you love. Right. You've got to die in the gym so you can live on the court, you know? Like it's just the nature of the beast. But I think that if you have your basics met and you're creating something that you would be proud of, and I think that is kind of the simplest question maybe to ask of success, like, are you proud of it? Hey, you did this thing. Are you proud of it? I felt like I could have did more. Well, it's not really successful. Hey, you did this. Are you proud of it? Yeah, you know what? I'm damn proud of that. It was a success.
What are you most proud of?
Ooh, I'm going to give you the most generic answer, but it's true. It's my family. I've been lucky enough to be with my wife since I was a teenager. I met her very young, and luckily I've been with her since then. I got two. I always wanted to be a dad. I always wanted 2 sons, 2 years apart. I have 2 sons, 2 years apart, and the wildest thing is when you have a family and you actually like your family. Like I like my family. Like not a lot of people like their family, but if you like them, you start going, yo, if my boys love me and my wife loves me, like, I want other people to like me, but it's also like, I'm pretty happy, right? I love spending time with my boys. I love spending time with my wife. Like I would choose hanging out with them. Like a lot of people say like, hey, once you had kids and married, you don't hang out as much. I'm like, I'm hanging out with the people I really want to hang out with. Like I love my kids, so I'm most proud of my family. I'm most proud of, sticking with my wife through the tough times. And, because when you're 18 and you're with someone, you actually have to go through the maturation process together. Meaning the a-hole that broke her heart isn't an ex-boyfriend. It was me when I was 22, right? And the dude that healed her from that broken heart was me when I was 26, right? So, instead of those being other people problems, and I get to come in as the white knight on the horse saving the day for my wife, I actually went through the entire maturation process with her. And I know that she loves me deeply for who I am. There's no question that there's nothing on the outside that I could ever have that would make me distrust that she loves me for the inside.
Yeah.
And my kids are the representation of giving love at the highest, deepest level to a vessel that receives it. My kids receive the love. They want to hang out with me. They want to hang. So I know family is probably the most generic answer that someone can give, but it's for sure the thing I'm most proud of.
Well, and I think it's probably one of the most difficult things to actually achieve. Right, is that when you go through, I'm somebody who's gone through divorce and absolutely loved my ex-husband and met him when I was 19, didn't think I'd be getting divorced, and life happens. And now have this gift of meeting my husband, that I have now, and it's a totally different version of love. But yes, having that, achieving that, I don't know, I don't think that there's a bigger success that anybody could have.
And it's harder, and you look at societal patterns, it's harder and harder to see families not only together, but liking each other.
Absolutely.
So
and with the kids and integrating the kids and having a really solid relationship with them too.
That's beautiful.
And balancing it.
Yeah.
Right? With the work piece too.
Yeah. If you actually think adulting is ridiculously hard. It's ridiculously hard. You got to take care of your body, have a good personality, contribute to the community, build a business, take care of your kids, be emotionally available for yourself, for others, meditate. It's
You get tired out.
Eat coconut oil, but then a realization hit me, which was I used to be Superman for the public and then Clark Kent for my family. I used to be the best version of myself in public, and then I would be like, oh no, when I come home, I need to decompress. When I come home, this is when I get to take off the mask. I get to just be me. And what I realized is I need to be Superman in the streets and Superman when I come home.
That's right.
And then when you just accept that, you actually find this reservoir of energy that you didn't think you had.
That is the belt. That is the whole belt.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're doing it?
You got to ask my wife and kids. I hope so. I think so.
One of the other things too, I wanted to bring up, I don't know if you remember this, but you do have these questions that you ask. And so one of the questions that you asked me, and this was probably, I don't know, second, third time I met you or something. And you're like, what do you think about? I'm like, huh? What do I think about? I don't know. It was the first time that anybody had ever asked me that. Yeah. And it took me back because I'm usually the person asking the questions. And I loved that. And I'm like, this isn't a guy who's just like, what did you do? What's your job like? What do you do? It's somebody who, it's like you want to know. You want to know this deeper level of people. Yeah.
My favorite conversations are those.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you ask someone a question like that and they give you a dude, geez, what do you? And then I go, okay, I see now where we can go. And I respect that. But I love when I have those moments where I ask that and someone says, I've been thinking about this. And then it becomes this fascinating conversation. Those are my favorite kind of conversations.
Yes. Yeah, I love them too. Yeah. And I remember I was like, I think about relationships all the time, relationship dynamics. And, and then, we went into all the adult development stuff too, which is, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I feel like you're an armchair psychologist.
No. What do you think about now?
What am I thinking about right now?
Just in general.
I am thinking about that I'm really grateful. And so I wanted to have you on here. Part of it is because I'm like, who is this guy? With the questions and who you have this persona and this stage presence when you're speaking. And I guess what I was really curious about is if that guy is the same guy one-on-one.
A friend of mine, his name is Jonathan Sprinkles. I don't know did you meet Jonathan in Miami?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So he's a great speaker, great friend of mine. He said something to me many years ago, and it was wonderful, which was be who you are on stage, and then just turn the volume up or down when you get off. So I like to think I'm the exact same person I am on stage and off stage. It's just the volume is maybe turned up a little bit more when I'm on stage in front of 300 people versus when I'm having a one-on-one conversation. But I like to be the same person everywhere I am, because I also believe that if you are the same person everywhere, then you never have to remember who you are. You know, you never have to be like...
It's actually easier.
Way easier. I don't like, am I the cool dude who's aloof in this situation, or am I the like It's like, I'm just going to be me. And like, whether, you know, I'm with my, you know, thug friends or I'm with my corporate friends, I'm going to be me. And I don't have to remember which version of me I brought to the table. And it's a lot easier.
Well, and that circles back to where we started, I think, which is, you know, how you grow up and when you're in that group-centric phase of life, or even transitioning from the egocentric to the group-centric. And it's like, all right, how am I going to be? How am I going to fit in? Yeah. It's about actually figuring out who you are.
And that is it's the best journey. You know, I once heard that the longest journey we will ever take is from our head to our hearts. You know, intellectually understanding something, but actually emotionally doing it is a very hard, long journey. And ultimately, you become... You know, it's the alchemist. You go on this really long journey just to become who you already were. But you just have this, like, you know, in adult development theory, we talk about self-actualization. You know, there's steps above self-actualization, but self-actualization is that, like, I am who I am because I am who I am.
Right.
Not because I'm trying to make my mom proud or my dad proud or trying to prove the bullies wrong. I do this because I do this. I do this because I care. And a lot of times that's a really long journey. Some of us never even reach that mountaintop. But if and when you do, there's a tranquility to it that I aspire for everyone to experience.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I've got one last question for you before we head out.
All right.
So a lot of what we're talking about, I think, is like who you are, right? Who you've become, how you've survived, the background that you had, but in a way that you are proud of, in a way that you're able to take those skills, use them now, truly. I mean, these same skills that you developed as a kid, right? The observation, the analysis, the integration into understanding really what makes people tick, and then be able to present that to other people. But I also know, and you've mentioned this a bit too, it's a lot about connection with people. Who would you say is the most influential person who's had like the greatest stamp on your life?
Oh, man. You know, the truthful answer is different people for different areas of my life, right? So it's hard to say this one person. Like, there's people that have impacted me as a husband more than others. There's people that have impacted me as a entrepreneur more than others. There's people like my dad taught me how to be really masculine, but still very emotionally available, right? So like I would say like in that genre, like my dad is at the top of the list. But then as an entrepreneur, there's a guy named Angelo Mastrangelo. He was my first business mentor. And he was the first dude I looked at and was like, he's checking all the boxes. He's an amazing dad, amazing husband, built and sold an incredible business, you know, had his doctorate, had a nonprofit that helped people. It was called the Second Chance Foundation, to help people at a tough time go back to school. And he was the first dude where I was like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And to this day, he's like 80 years old, amazing dude, still runs like 5 miles a day, does 100 push-ups a day, like, you know, physically just he's just incredible dude. So Angelo, I will always give my flowers to him as someone outside of my family who was the first dude, and it still is a dude that I just was so impressed with and has given me so much advice. He was my first real mentor. So I would say Angelo Mastrangelo at top of my list. Now, obviously, in terms of life, my wife, in terms of growing as becoming a rounded person, no one's impacted me more than my wife.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's different areas of your life that, like when I say life, I mean realizing what's important, finding out who I am and how I want to show up. Like my wife was the person who kind of like picked me up when I was down and pushed me forward when, you know, I didn't have the strength in myself when I was at, you know, because, you know, your significant other sees you in your darkest dark, right? And they either will shun you or support you. So she's the one who pushed me through the darkest times. So for that, like she's the most influential. So it's hard to say one person, but there's different categories where I have like my Mount Rushmore of humans.
Yeah. Well, and I got to say this. I mentioned this to our friend Jeff Knaus too. I'm like, I love that you guys gush about your wives.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the sweetest, most genuine things.
Jeff is I don't know how he married his wife. She's way out of his league. He just somehow put like a spell on her. And I think he's like, I got to acknowledge the spell I put on my wife, because if he doesn't, she's going to leave. And he's a very smart man to do so.
You just better not take those women for granted, right? All right. Yeah. Arel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr.
feel
Melissa.
like I do know you better.
Thank you for creating an incredible space.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.